Hey everybody, it's Bob. I figured I better make a video because I've been getting a lot of inquiries from my subscribers about if I'm dead or what. So I'm not dead yet, but I'm working on it and I'm doing my best. Believe me. This is just a few items from what's going on currently in Thailand, and I'll try to walk you through several of the issues. But we're glad you're here. We hope things are good where you're at and that you're not having to, be imprisoned in a bad lockdown. Our lockdown here is virtually nothing. If you don't mind getting your temperature taken when you go in, there's a B. It went away, I think. If you don't mind getting your temperature taken when you go into malls and big shopping arenas, banks and stuff like that. But their contract tracing here is good. This one guy got out of quarantine for 2 hours, and not only did they run him down, but they identified and contacted 7,400 people he walked within 6 feet of and tested them. The most recent news about SONGKRAN is it's going to happen, but it's not going to be a water festival. That'll be interesting because it's always been a water festival. For those of you who aren't familiar with SONGKRAN, it's Thailand's New Year, but normally it's a nationwide water fight, and you can even throw water on cops and nuns and monks. But this year it's going to be water free, and I quite frankly have my doubts about whether that's going to work. There's too many people that want to go out and have a water fight, and enforcing this, it would be a nightmare. So we'll see what happens, but officially, SONGKRAN is dry this year. Okay, we just had our April Fool's Day canceled. That's right. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. Thailand has threatened anybody who posts fake news, which is what they call April Fool's jokes. Anybody that puts those on the Facebook, they can be fined. They consider it fake news, and April Fool's jokes just don't go over on Facebook here. So that's the story, fans. Don't call anybody a cacahead in Thailand on Facebook. Okay, here's another weird one. We haven't been having those roadside checkpoints since the COVID thing started, but they began again this month, being April. And I haven't been through one yet. I haven't seen one yet, but they say they're out there. We'll see. Okay, here we have another one of the police checkpoints. Here's the deal. You can rent a scooter without having a Thai or an international license, but if you will be checked, especially in the area of the moat and the old wall. There's going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 inspections on this road going around town. So most people over there are Chinese and European tourists. None of them have licenses, so they're all getting a fine. Some of them are not wearing helmets, and that is also a fine, but past that, there's not much scrutiny of equipment, or occasionally they'll check to see if you got your tax decal displayed if you're an owner, and that's about it. Okay, let's chat about Myanmar. I'm going to call it Burma because that's what people from there call themselves, Burmese. Myanmar is the name the government gave the country after the last military takeover, and right now it's getting kind of crazy over there. They've shot and killed over 500 people who are peacefully protesting. It's also weird because over in Myanmar there's not just one army, there's several armies that function within the country and who may not share the same philosophies. So the potential for this getting really weird is there. It's definitely there. Now, I don't want to be the prognosticator of bad news, but it does look like this stuff going on in Burma could develop into a civil war. A lot of people don't get this about Burma, but there's not just one Myanmar army. There's several armed militias and factions, so there's a chance that they will start fighting the government, and there's a chance of outside interference, although we don't need a certain country that feels they have to meddle in everybody's business on the planet over here. As I mentioned, several hundred people have been shot and killed during the demonstrations in Myanmar, although they are not violent protests. And the government is meeting them with violence, not the protesters. They've also escalated the charges against Aung San Suu Kyi, and although I personally think she didn't do a lot during the Rohingya genocide, except justify the military government's bombing and bulldozing and burning their villages, she does represent a powerful figurehead for the people who think democracy and freedom is going to be a thing in Myanmar. So she's back under arrest. People are getting shot. People are fleeing the country, and it's kind of like it was here in Thailand back in 2013. Not a good situation. Hopefully the military government will relax before they have outside powers interfering with their policies. Hopefully I got through that without getting myself in trouble with any southeastern country. For Thailand, we're getting a whole lot of refugees from Burma right now. There's a couple of thousand being held up in Mae Hong Son, which is right on the border with Burma, and down south they're grabbing groups of 30 to 50 being smuggled in across the river. And although they say they're not sending them back to Myanmar, Amnesty, or one of those organizations that looks out for human rights, is saying they are sending them back across the river, so we don't know who to believe. And I'm not saying either one of them knows more than the other. I'm just saying that the news here is somewhat based on conjecture and what ifs and wherefores and coulds and couldn'ts and shoulds and shouldn'ts, etc. Now, to make it more difficult, a lot of the peoples along the borders of Thailand and Myanmar are tribal people, principally the Karen, K-A-R-E-N tribe, but there are a few others, and since they're not citizens of Myanmar or Thailand, to them the border is basically a river, but not a border. And there are a bunch of places between Thailand and Myanmar that a 10-year-old can wade across the rivers that are the border, especially up at Mae Sai Talichek border, where I watched 10-year-olds playing with a boat across the border 7 or 8 times in 15 minutes. It's not a tight border, so there is COVID and refugees coming in to Thailand from Myanmar at this time. The military is watching the borders, but the borders are really porous. They're heavy, dense forested areas, severely steep mountain areas, and if somebody wants to sneak Sally through the alley, that's something. Okay, anybody that's familiar with Thailand knows that April is not the month of happy air, and once again this year it's bad. There was a pretty big forest fire out in Samong, but there's quite a few fires being burned at the moment, as you can see from the map. Some of it's agricultural burning. Supposedly a lot of it is forest fires. We got a really good rain last night, but although I can see the mountain again, it's still very dark, so hopefully we'll get some more rain and clean up the air more. Everybody have a good time wherever you are. Do the best you can, and we'll come out of this mess sooner or later.